What's the matter, old man? Think those medals make you special?
No!
You've said enough. Move along. You think calling someone's gonna save you? Yeah. I don't need saving. I need respect.
Stand up, make it right, or sit there and remember you've been humiliated in front of everyone.
You brought a whole army for this.
Freeze this moment in your mind. Burn it into your memory like a photograph you can't unsee. A quiet diner, a warm afternoon. People sipping coffee, laughing softly, forks clinking against plates. The kind of peaceful scene that feels safe, and then everything cracks. An old man sits alone in the corner booth, his back slightly hunched, his hands trembling just a little with age. He's 81 years old, wearing a faded veteran's cap that carries more stories than the world will ever know. Some noticed him when they walked in. Most didn't. He wasn't loud. He wasn't demanding. He was just there, existing gently in a world that rarely slows down for anyone. But peace has a fragile heartbeat, because bursting through the diner doors came a group of bikers, heavy boots, leather jackets, tattooed fists, and voices that swallowed the room whole. Their laughter was sharp, restless, reckless. The leader, a tall, broad man with eyes that scanned for weakness, spotted the elderly veteran, and he moved toward him like a storm cloud. The old man didn't look up. Not even when the biker's shadow covered his table. His hand trembled as he lifted his coffee cup, just a tiny tremor, but enough to show he sensed the danger hovering above him. The biker smirked, leaning down. The diner fell still, as if every sound was waiting to see what he'd do, and then the slap, not just a hit. A crack, a violent snap that tore through the entire diner like lightning. Forks dropped. Cups froze midair. A waitress gasped so loudly that even she startled herself. People at nearby tables recoiled, some reaching for their phones, others too shocked to breathe. Every single person felt their chest tighten, as if the air itself refused to move. The biker stood over the trembling veteran, chest heaving, fist still hovering in the air like the threat wasn't over. The old man touched his cheek, slowly, painfully, and looked down, not because he was afraid, but because humiliation weighs heavier than pain. What nobody in that room knew, not the biker, not the terrified diners, not even the trembling veteran, was that in exactly 22 minutes, the diner door would open again, and when it did, the old man's son would walk in. Not alone, not quietly, but flanked by uniformed soldiers whose presence would flip this story upside down. This is the moment that left an entire town speechless. It was a quiet afternoon at Miller's Country Diner, the kind of peaceful, slow-moving hour where everyone seemed to breathe in rhythm. Warm coffee steamed in mugs. Soft country music drifted through the air like a gentle breeze. A couple of truckers chatted near the window. A young mom fed her toddler bits of pancake. Nothing unusual, nothing alarming. Just the calm hum of an ordinary day, and then the doors slammed open. The biker gang didn't walk in. They stormed in. Heavy boots thudded against the wooden floor. Jackets creaked. Their voices were loud, sharp, and full of the kind of laughter that sounded like trouble long before it became trouble. People stiffened. Conversations faded. Even the music suddenly felt too soft to compete with their presence. Leading them was Troy, broad shoulders, arms covered in tattoos, a face carved by ego and fueled by something darker. He scanned the diner like a predator looking for entertainment. And then his eyes landed on an elderly man in the corner booth, 81-year-old Mr. Harris. The old veteran sat quietly, wearing a faded military cap. His hands trembled slightly as he held his cup, but his posture still carried the dignity of someone who had lived through things these bikers could never imagine. Troy smirked, swaggering toward him. "Old man," he sneered loudly, making sure everyone could hear. "You still pretending you fought for something?" The room tensed. Mr. Harris didn't respond. His eyes stayed on his cup. Silence wasn't weakness for him. It was survival, discipline, wisdom earned in deserts and battlefields. But that silence, It infuriated Troy. He hated being ignored, hated anything that didn't feed his pride, so he reached down and snatched the cap off the table. "Look at this relic," he mocked, dangling it between two fingers like trash. "Bet you weren't even a real soldier. Probably made this up to get sympathy." The diner held its breath. Every head turned, every spine stiffened, and then, without warning, Troy slapped him. A brutal, open-handed strike that echoed through the diner like a gunshot. Mr. Harris fell sideways, gripping his cheek, eyes stinging not from pain but from humiliation. Humiliation no man of honor should ever have to endure. The diner went silent. Too silent. The kind of silence that shakes the soul. No one moved. No one dared breathe, until the young waitress, pale and shaking, stepped back and whispered into her phone, "I'm calling your son." The moment the call connected, the entire trajectory of the story shifted, as if fate itself had been waiting for that single ring. Miles away, at a nearby military training base, Captain Daniel Harris stood tall in formation with his unit. The sun blazed overhead, glinting off polished boots and disciplined posture. It was just another routine drill, until Daniel's phone buzzed in his pocket. He never checked his phone during training, unless it was important. When he saw the waitress's name flash across the screen, his stomach tightened. She never called him during work, never. He stepped aside, answered quietly, and the first thing he heard was breathing. Shaky, uneven, on the edge of tears. "Daniel." The voice broke. "Your father. Someone hit him." Everything inside Daniel froze. "He's bleeding," she whispered. "Please come, please." In that instant, the world narrowed to a pinpoint. Daniel didn't ask who, didn't ask why, didn't ask anything. His voice, normally calm, dropped into something colder, sharper, purposeful. "Secure the area. I'm coming." Those 4 words changed everything. A few feet away, his soldiers had heard enough to understand. They saw the shift in his posture, the storm rising in his eyes. Without hesitation, not a second, not a question, several stepped forward. "Sir, we ride with you," one said. Another nodded. Family is family. They weren't armed. They weren't aggressive. They weren't going to start trouble. They were simply following their captain, the man who had led them through tough missions, long nights, and grueling drills. If he needed them now, they'd stand with him. Meanwhile, back at the diner, the clock was ticking. The biker gang kept laughing loudly, replaying the moment Troy slapped Mr. Harris like it was some kind of joke. They had no idea they had just shattered the peace of the wrong family. Mr. Harris, still holding his cheek, whispered weakly, "Just let it go. Don't get anyone involved." But the people around him, regular diners, truckers, moms, teenagers, knew this wasn't something anyone could ignore. They kept glancing at the door, at the clock, at Troy, waiting. Minute 10. The tension grew heavier. Minute 16. The air felt thick, unbreathable. Minute 19. People sat frozen, eyes shifting between the door and the bikers. Then, minute 22. The bell above the diner door chimed, soft, clear, and absolutely life-changing. The door opened, and the entire diner shifted as if gravity itself had changed. Every head turned. Every conversation died mid-sentence. The air tightened. Not with fear, but with a presence so commanding it demanded attention without saying a single word. Captain Daniel Harris stepped inside, still in full uniform from the training base. Boots polished. Jacket crisp. Shoulders squared with the kind of posture that only years of service carve into a man. His expression was unreadable, except for the eyes. Those eyes burned with a controlled fire, the kind that could melt steel if unleashed. Behind him, 6 soldiers followed in perfect formation. They didn't speak. They didn't glare. They didn't puff their chests. They simply entered the diner with calm, disciplined steps, 6 pillars of justice standing tall behind their captain. Their presence wasn't violent. It wasn't loud. It was something more powerful, authority. The biker gang, who moments ago were laughing like hyenas, looked up, first amused, then confused, then terrified. The moment their eyes locked with Daniel's, the smirks evaporated. His gaze wasn't wild. It wasn't angry. It was focused, razor-sharp, burning with a fury that had been caged behind discipline and training. Daniel didn't even glance at the bikers at first. He walked straight to the corner booth where his father sat. He knelt down, gently touching the bruise on his father's cheek. A bruise that should have never existed. "Dad," Daniel whispered, voice shaking with emotion he didn't let anyone else hear. "Who did this?" Mr. Harris wiped away a tear, embarrassed more than injured. "Daniel, please, don't cause trouble." But the truth sat in the room like an elephant. Daniel wasn't the one who caused this trouble. Troy already had. Daniel stood up slowly, deliberately. He turned to face the bikers. And the soldiers behind him instinctively stepped into formation. Not aggressive, but resolute, a silent wall of honor. Daniel didn't yell. He didn't threaten. He didn't raise his hand. He simply spoke, and his voice hit harder than any punch Troy could ever throw. "You struck a United States veteran." "My father. A man who served this country before you were even born, and you did it for fun." A chill rippled through the diner. Troy swallowed, trying to keep his bravado, but the room suddenly felt much smaller, much hotter, much more dangerous, not because of weapons, but because of accountability. Daniel stepped forward once. "Just one step." "Troy," he said calmly, "you're going to apologize, to him, to this diner, and then you're going to walk out quietly." Troy's fists clenched, his jaw locked. But then he looked at the soldiers, standing silent, unified, immovable. Not intimidation, not violence, just presence. Presence that reminded him of the line between foolishness and disaster. Slowly, painfully slowly, Troy lowered his head. I went too far. I'm sorry." He placed the veteran's cap back on the table with trembling hands, and for the first time since he walked into the diner, Troy said nothing. He turned and walked out in complete silence. His gang followed behind him, heads down, shoulders collapsed, their thunder completely gone. When the door finally closed, behind the defeated bikers, the silence inside the diner lasted only a heartbeat, just long enough for everyone to absorb what they had witnessed. And then, suddenly, as if a wave of relief washed through the room, the entire diner erupted into applause. Not polite clapping, not hesitant clapping, but a deep, heartfelt, echoing applause that came from the soul. And it wasn't for the soldiers, though their presence had been powerful. It wasn't for the confrontation, though it had been unforgettable. It was for something far deeper. It was for the quiet dignity of an 81-year-old veteran who refused to lose his grace even when struck. And for a son, a captain, who didn't arrive with fists or fury, but with presence, respect, and unwavering love. Daniel bent down and helped his father to his feet with the gentlest hands you could imagine. "Come on, Dad," he said softly, steadying him. "Let's get you checked out." But Mr. Harris shook his head, a slow smile stretching across his weathered face. "Let's just have dinner," he said. "I'm hungry." The line was so unexpected, so pure, so perfectly human that the entire diner burst into laughter. Warm laughter, relieved laughter, the kind that melts tension like sunlight melts frost. It was as if the storm had finally passed. The soldiers relaxed their posture, taking seats at nearby tables. People who had been frozen in fear moments earlier were now shaking their heads, smiling, whispering to one another about what they had just witnessed. Daniel helped his father sit back down, straightened his cap, and took a seat across from him. For a moment they simply looked at each other, father and son, warrior and protector, sharing a silent exchange of gratitude. Then the waitress approached, wiping a tear from the corner of her eye. "Your meal's been taken care of," she said. Daniel looked up. "By who?" Before she could answer, a man from another table raised his hand, then a woman 2 booths over, then a trucker near the window, then an elderly couple. Within seconds, the entire diner insisted on covering the bill. Not out of pity, not out of guilt, but out of respect. Because everyone in that room had seen something rare, something pure and powerful. They hadn't witnessed revenge. They had witnessed respect. They hadn't seen violence. They had seen unity. They hadn't watched dominance. They had witnessed honor, and in a world that often forgets these values, for one unforgettable moment, that little diner became a reminder of everything good people can still be. If this story moved you, if respect, dignity, and courage still matter to you, then don't leave without showing some love. Hit like, share this story with someone who needs it, and subscribe for more powerful tales that remind us what real strength looks like. And tell me in the comments, what would you have done if you were in that diner watching everything happen?